So I'm Steve Wood, recovered alcoholic. Welcome to Big Book Compendium. I'm gonna start off with a story, and this really leads well into what we're covering today. So once upon a time, a cow was out grazing in the jungle, and suddenly a lion races towards the cow. So she turns around and flees, desperately looking for some place to escape this crazy lion. And soon she sees a shallow pond off in the distance, and barely escaping the lion's reach, she jumps into the pond, and the lion in its energy comes after her. To the surprise of both, it's extremely shallow and very deep mud. The cow and the lion finds themselves a short distance apart from each other, stuck in the mud with their head, right to their necks. And the lion repeatedly snarls at the cow, and I'm going to enjoy eating you. And he thrashes around, in fury, trying to get out of the mud. And he becomes worried that he could not escape. The cow watched the lion struggle to free himself and asks him, "Do you have a master?" The lion's snarl repeated. He tells him, he goes, "I'm the king of the jungle. Why would I need a master? I myself am my master." The cow says, "You may be the king of the jungle, but here your power has failed you." "And what about you, Snail?" The lion says, you're going to die here with me as well." And he goes, the cow smiled, "I am not." The lion snapped and looks at him and says, "If the king of the jungle cannot free himself, how is some ordinary cow?" He gently replies, "I cannot free myself, but my master can. When the sun sets, he will come looking for me. He will, once he finds me, he will raise me up from this and bring me home." The lion fell silent and kept glaring at the cow. But soon enough, when the sun set, the master arrived. He immediately recognized the cow's dilemma and lifted her to safety. As they walked home, the cow and the master both felt renewed gratitude for one another. But the master said to the cow, "I would have been happy to save the lion if he would have allowed me to." See, the cow represents a surrendered heart. The lion represents our egotistical mind, and the master represents God. The chase represents life, and the mud represents a struggle to live in it. So it's good to be independent and not rely on anybody, but no, you always need a master who will always, look out for you and care for you. Turning your life to God does not mean you are weak. All it does mean is that you can be stronger with God's help. And so I have a quote too I want to read real quick. Is this man is respected all over the world. He taught moral codes like of love and forgiveness and helping others. And this is a quote by Sai Baba, and I love this quote. "There are countless gurus and mentors in the world, but our Father is the real guru. Others might say good things, but we should never forget our Father's words. In short, love the Father, surrender to him completely, and give your life over to him. And then you will see there is no darkness, only light." So today's lesson, we're going to be going over the decision to turn one life over to care to God. This is the third week we've covered this step. We've gone really deep on it. I want to do a quick review of up to where we are at this point. I'm going to share the screen. Oops. I hope everyone can see that. So we're human beings who lack human power because of this mental obsession, this reoccurring, persistent idea of drinking. And that's in step one right here, of course. That doesn't respond to reason. It doesn't have choice. And then we have a physical reaction to alcohol, where we lose all control once we start. Basically, I have no choice against the first drink because of the obsession. I have no choice against a second drink because of the allergy, or the third, or the fourth, or the fifth. And we surrender to the fact we're powerless in step one. We we become willing to seek the power. How we find the power, say, which we went over before on page 25, is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And where we find the power, the book told us, was deep down within us on page 55. And we have to be willing to believe in the power greater than ourselves. That's step 2. And we reach a turning point. Decision is to seek spiritual change, to seek that power. And we seek that again with the same, I mentioned, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9. That's where we're standing at tonight. So I'm going to stop this share thing. And that's a journey we've gone on all through this. And this is lesson 24, 25. And we're probably on step 3. So that's the beauty of this. And that's the beauty of the program. Page 63, top of the page. These are the promises. Step 3, or I like to call them the promises of putting God first. And all these promises become reality, become results. Because when they wrote these, I don't think they wrote them as promises necessarily. I guess they did because they said promises in the book, but they really become results if we proceed beyond step 3. So it says when we sincerely, that means honestly. Remember, I talk about honesty is the awareness of where I'm at. Knowing, do I have resentment? Do I have fear? How I feel right now? Not lying to myself. When we sincerely, honestly took such a position, and that position is putting God first, all sorts of remarkable things followed. We had a new employer. So what does an employer do? They pay you for the work you do. And the thing about this employer pays really well if we do the work. And I've heard numerous guys say this over the years, is you either get paid or you pay the price. You either put the work in or you pay the price. Look what it says next. Being all powerful, he provided what we needed if we keep close to him and perform his work well. So let's break this down right here. So God provides what we need if we get close to him and perform his work well. So there's 2 conditions there to, having God as this provider they're talking about. The first one, if we get close to him, perform his work. Keeping close to God, how do we do that? Well, we do it by 4 through 9, and we do it again in 4 through 9, step 10. So in reality, I say 10 and 11, 4 through 9, 10, 11. And that's the beauty of it. I can't do 11 without doing inventory to clear away stuff. And I keep close to God. As this book says on page 55, the great reality is within me. I'm going to connect to that consciousness. And the only way I can connect to that consciousness is by getting rid of the crap I'm putting in front of it. That's how I keep close to God. Unshakable foundation for life, as the 12 and 12 calls it. The second condition, perform his work. So what is God's work? Let's go to page 77 and just get a glimpse of a few pages in here. What is examples of God's work for us, for people within the program? So we're on page 77 in the middle of that page, I believe, somewhere around the middle. It says our real purpose, and that's a big deal right there, is to fit ourselves in maximum service to God and the people about us. So fit ourselves was, again, 4 through 9, doing 10, but maximum service, maximum is like, the biggest, greatest amount possible. But what's service? People get confused. It's simply to provide duties to help or assist others. And, the greatest amount of service you could possibly do, as they're saying here. And this is why I love the program, is what is the ultimate service that we can do? Sponsoring. I mean, there's service we do leading up to that. I mean, we get commitments and stuff, but sponsoring others through the program recovery is doing God's work. 102 is page 102. Will explain a little bit more on that. We're going to jump a few pages here and there for right now. Page 102 says it beautifully. It tells us what our job is. Whenever we have a new employer, well, here's our job. Your job now is to be at a place where you may be of maximum, there's that word again, helpfulness to others. So never hesitate to go anywhere if you can be helpful. You should not hesitate to visit the most sordid spot on earth on such an errand. I love this. Keep on the firing line of life with these motives, and God will keep you unharmed. Wow. Unharmed. Providing what we need, right? That's beautiful. God provides what we need by doing his work. He keeps us unharmed. Go to 124, and I always stick this in there because a lot of people have heard it before. Some of you have, I know. But I had a sponsee commit suicide years ago, and it just made me I didn't want to stop sponsoring. I just questioned things. And I only had about 3 years of sobriety at the time. And then I threw my book down on the bed and it opened up to this page. It sounds like a wise sale, but it's true. And then I was like, okay. And I read this showing, so it's the middle of the second full paragraph, showing others who suffer how we were given help was the very thing which makes life seem so worthwhile to us now. Cling to the thought that in God's hands, God first, God's hands, the dark past is the greatest possession you have. It's the care of God, right? The key to life and happiness for others. With it, you can avert misery and death for them. So again, sponsoring, helping others, altruism, that's God's work. Let's go back to where we were. So back at 63. So what it's saying here, if we put God first, staying close to him, right? That's living in 429, step 10, a daily reprieve, step 11, putting others second, which is doing God's work, our needs get met. So he provides what we need. Interesting, the provider, a provider gives someone something they need or have to have. God first, others second, my needs get met. That's what happens. My needs get met from God providing. God first, others second, my needs get met. So this completely shifts us into being alive, awake, selfless. What is selfless? It's if selfishness is tending mostly to my needs with little or no thought of others, and selfless must be the opposite, tending mostly to the needs of others with little or thought of my own needs. Let's look at the promise of putting God, the promises of putting God's first, others second, or needs being met. Established on such a footing, how do you get established? You put time and effort into something, energy into something, but most of all, you build something, and we're building something here, right? Established on such a footing, we become less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. Wow, not easy to do. More and more, we become interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. So instead of selfish and self-centeredness, the process of altruism takes a hold of you. You're centered on others, other-centered. As we felt new power flow in, new power, not the old recycled one, new. A lot of people want to bring old ideas into this. It doesn't work that way. It has to be a new power. It doesn't have to be get rid of, if you come in with an idea of a higher power or relationship with God or religious aspect, whatever it is, you don't have to get rid of that. You just have to form a new relationship with it, right? A new relationship with it. And that's all. Because the old one wasn't working. So it has to be new. So there's another condition there. It cannot be the old one. it must be so we can receive these promises. As we felt new, powerful, and as we enjoyed peace of mind, like I said before many times in here, who does not? Is there anyone that does not want peace of mind? And peace of mind, I mean, you could list all the spiritual gifts and the spiritual goals you want, but peace of mind, that was for me as one of the things I wanted. Emotional calmness, the absence of fear, stress, or anxiety, guilt. The feeling of being safe and protected. We call that security, right? We call that security, feeling protected. I want to feel that. And I can either have security from God and feel safe and protected, or I can follow my instincts and have security, where it's always wrapped on with, it's always based on emotional security, where I'm getting it up and down. And it's also based on material, which is pocketbook. I'm always based on what I see out here I need to have. Do you see what the care of God does? Peace of mind is not from the absence of conflicts in our life. It's the ability to face those challenges life brings us. That's the thing. As we enjoy peace of mind, we discovered we could face life successfully. That's quite opposite of, any life run on self-work how to be a success. We could face life successfully. Remember the bedevilments. That is facing life unsuccessfully. It's failure as a result of following my instincts, following pride and self-esteem and all that, and the material. As we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of his presence. Wow, that's some deep stuff. Conscious of his presence. Conscious of his presence, a deep awareness that God is real, no doubt. The Gnostic aspect, Gnostic, not agnostic, Gnostic, and that means to know God. It means the only way you know anything in life is to experience. Everything else is a theory. So if I experience God, we have a spiritual experience or spiritual awakening, either one. So look what it says next, is we begin to lose our fear of today. We begin to lose our fear of tomorrow. We begin to lose our fear of the hereafter. And the hereafter is pretty deep because it's a time that has not yet happened. Another place and time. But look at this. It says we are reborn. Reborn? Reborn to the awareness of what you are and what you've always been. And what our human side always tries to move away from or avoid. And that's the God consciousness. The awareness of God. The awareness of that voice within you, whatever you want to call it. Conscious of his presence. But look at the guarantee there. Reborn. This is not about second chance at life. It means to have a brand new beginning. And that's one thing that I needed to have, was a brand new beginning. I just need a new life. I need to have a new life. I didn't ask for it. I didn't look for it. It just happened from these steps. I was brought back to life. I was raised from the dead. It's not about living life, leaving life at all. It's about rejoining life. And another word for reborn is conversion. Spiritual conversion is the adoption of a new belief systems towards God that completely differs from the old ones, and that leads to a change in character and wholeness. Sanity. Wholeness is sanity. Same thing as where awakening leads us, or experience. Personality change sufficient to bring about recovery. Same thing as entire psychic change, all by undergoing deep spiritual change we call the steps. Before we get into breaking down the third step prayer, I want to read a sentence after it, after the third step prayer. And it says, we thought well. We do that good, don't we? We thought well, we think well. We thought well before taking this step, making sure is another condition we're ready. This is about being ready. This is a big thing to do, that we can outlast and abandon ourselves early to him. And here's the thing is, many think the word abandon is to leave something behind. And some of us have, feel abandoned in life and all that. And they're not referring to us being abandoned. Abandon also means to withdraw from something. in the face of danger, like abandoned ship, right? We're not running away from anything here. They're referring to us abandoning ourselves to God. So abandon also means what? It means to give up control. To give up control. And think about this in your life. What's one of our greatest struggles? Who gets control of it? First, our parents controlled our life for a period, right? Maybe older brothers and sisters, depending on where you're at. We go to school and the teacher controls us, and eventually the principal, right? Some of us played sports and the coach is in control. We get our first job and there's someone telling us what to do. At least they tried to. But how many times did you get in trouble with parents, teachers, or bosses, et cetera? Why? Over control. Maybe every relationship you've ever had is a battle for control. Then it's after years of fighting, for who gets, control. We some of us like it, and we're not going to give up ever again. I'm going to hold on to this control. I'm going to protect it. That's our instincts in action. The real truth is we never had control. First off, let's look from the first step standpoint. It's been a battle for control. We try to control our drinking because of allergy, and that's a failure. That's a failure at control. You can't do it. Then there was the actor we read about last week, who thinks he's a director, who believes that he's in control. Control. Remember the control he wants? If everyone stays put and people do as he wants, everything will be great. His happiness is determined by what others do. And if he doesn't get control, what happens? He gets resentment, which is another failure at control. Resentment. Why do we fail control? Because we're driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity. Driven means strongly controlled. There's that word again. We're driven by instincts. Instincts run riot. And when something runs riot, it's out of control. Think of like the running of the bulls, they do in Spain. It's out of control. Basically when my instincts are out of control, I wind up being selfish, self-seeking. And what do? We play God. Well, playing God is trying to control others in situations. Another failure at control. So quitting playing God is giving up trying to control life and handing it over to God. It's quitting playing God. Page 59, remember what it says? Half measures avails nothing. What do? We sit at the turning point. We ask his care with complete abandon. And the turning point is when we became alcoholics, crushed by self-imposed crisis. We cannot postpone or evade. We had to fiercely face the process. Either God is everything or else he's nothing. God there is, and what had a choice to be? If you're a real alcoholic faced with the steps, there will come a time where we reach a turning point where we must abandon ourselves to God. It sounds scary if you haven't had that, haven't done the steps yet. But they're asking us to give up not some control or little control, they're asking us to give up control to God. Is God or me? Another important word is utterly in that sentence. Utterly to him. Utterly means completely without question. So if abandon means to completely give up control, and utterly means completely without question, I'm going to reread the statement that we read a minute ago with those words. We thought well before taking this step, making sure we're ready to at last give up control completely and without question to God. Now, for me, I had no idea what that meant until I did the steps. I did step 3. I turned my will life over to care of the steps because my sponsor suggested that just do the steps, see what happens. And because I was struggling with God and I would have been stuck at step 3 forever. I had too many questions, and then God revealed himself to me, and it was the God within. But that whole thing sounds scary to get to that point of turning yourself to God. If you want this, you need to give up control without question. Why? Because you might say, I don't need to do that, but what legs do you have to stand on? What do you have to stand on? So if you disagree with me there, I'm not saying I'm right or wrong. How successful it's questions. How successful you've been controlling your life, running your life, managing your life. Remember what it says at the end of step 1. Can you control your resentments, fear, guilt, or they control you? Can you control pride, personal relations? They control you. Or can you control high self-esteem, your money? Does it control you? Can you control anxiety, or does it control you? That type of stuff. Can you control alcohol, or does it control you? So all these are the earmarks of the unmanageable life. A failure at our controlling our life. Any life on itself could hardly be a success. Freedom is the answer. Freedom is the answer. Transformation must occur. If we're not willing to take that transformation, we suffer from untreated alcoholism, and we don't want that. And here's the problem. Most people only turn their life to God when they're afraid or overwhelmed. They want a 911 God rather than a 411 God. It is one who is, that's not one who relies on God, only going to God when things are bad, the 911 God. My grandma used to always say, there's no atheists in foxholes. Think about that. God is about getting strength, inspiration, guidance, and direction because we don't have it. It's about giving up your life. So turning our life over to the care of God is this transfer of control. Today, I'm not in control of how things in my life turn out necessarily. I take action. I leave the results to God. I put the outcome in God's hands. As I try to. That's the plan. That's the care. God does the heavy lifting. That's the way I look at it. That's my motto. I say, I do the work. God does the heavy lifting. Let's go to page 64 real quick before we get into this third step prayer. So let's look at this paragraph, very top of the page. It's great to read. I read this responses before we do the third step. It says, though our decision, which of course is step 3, was a vital and crucial step. Vital and crucial. So that tells me how important it is. It could have little permanent effect unless at once, there's a time frame, followed by a strenuous effort, which would be step 4. To face would be 5, and to be rid of 6 and 7, the things in ourselves which are blocking us. Strenuous effort 4, to face 5, to rid ourselves. Blocking us from what? Blocking us from God. That's a step 3 warning right there. That's what I call it. So it's saying recovery begins with 4. We must always unite prayer with action. We'll get more into that when we cover that again next week. But again, another thing my grandma used to always say, if you're going to pray for potatoes, you better start digging. The secret to prayer is always action. I'm going to put up the third step prayer. I'm going to break it down. All right. So the third step prayer, I had strong mixed feelings when I did the third step, such as doubt. It's a big mixed feeling. This prayer, eased me into what I was about to do. And it absolutely blew my mind. Growing up Catholic, I did lots of prayers. I could tell you every prayer there was, from the, our dinner prayer, bless us Lord, and all that. And, at night, now I lay me down to sleep. And I did all those prayers, but I was just told to do them at a young age, baptized when I was that big. Nothing wrong with that. But I never spoke in sincerity with prayer. I didn't know how to speak with prayer from your heart. But I also didn't know what desperation would do. The first time I did the third step prayer, so in 96, I went to a book study and I heard these guys speak for the first time. I've been in AA and other fellowships for 6 trips to rehab at that time. Never got more than past the third step or 3 months sobriety. I didn't really last very much longer after going to that book study, but I did hear the allergy obsession and some other things. My point is when I got sober in 2000, I hunted those guys down and I went to their houses and went to their book studies, their houses. I shadowed everything they did, and every day was something different. Going to Salvation Army, sponsoring guys, and I just did it. It was completely different than I've ever done. And when I got to the third step, I was in a book study. I had done the third, some entry in the third step, my sponsor, and he said, "We won't do this prayer now." I get to the book study and there's about 27 people there, maybe 35 at this guy's house. And my grand sponsor is a big Okie. He goes, "All right, everyone." He goes, we got like 9 guys here doing the third step. He goes, "All right, boys, get down on your knees." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I went last on purpose. Because like when I get picked on teams as a kid, I always would stand last in line because I didn't want to be picked first. I want to be the last. It was like I went last because I want to see, or I always spoke last. I want to hear what everyone else had to say. And thank God I did that, because these guys started to pray like they were dying of cancer, desperation. And I started to get tears in my eyes that just weep. You weep when you don't know they're coming. I did that prayer and it just, I was like, I never done anything like that before. So there's other prayers in recovery that are cool, but we have 7-step prayer and all that, but none of them. 7-step prayer is pretty much on the same thing, but for the third step, none of them have the same depth and weight as the third step prayer does. It's absolutely beautiful. So let's look at this. The first thing says God. We know what God is. It's where your own conception is. I use the word God because people understand it. So the supreme being, as considered power, internal spirit, whatever, love, all-knowing, whatever you want to call it. It's the principal object of many faiths and worship of monotheist, religions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, as one who created the universe and rules the universe. So it's whatever your conception of God is, and that's the beautiful thing of AA. It says, "I offer myself to thee, to build with me." Offer myself to. See, for offering is an expression of readiness to give or do something. So this is a declaration of giving control to God, offering our life for God's guidance. Thee is a singular pronunciation meaning you. Build means to construct. Bill's telling us again, he's building something again. He's building, we've been building this arch. He's always building it. I love the fact he does that. Let me give you an example of when I think of building. Down the street from my house, when I moved here 10 years ago, there was an old pizza restaurant and they put up a fence around it and it says coming soon was Skippolini's, whatever, a new pizza place. And they put up the fence around there, and the old building with a tarp is announced of the new building. And then there was pounding and banging and all this stuff going on, tearing down the old building. And then these big trucks came in, they hauled away the rubble to make room for something new. You see, destruction has to happen. You must tear down before any construction can take place. We're the same way. When we turn our one lives over to the care of God, we do that by step 4. We take the action. There's a period of destruction, 4 and 5, and then removal in 6 and 7, and a period of construction, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm reconstructing my life. Reconstruction, rebuilding. Then it says next on here, to do with me as thou wilt, as your will. So thou means singular pronunciation, meaning you or your. Will means same as will. Will is God's thinking. So in this frame. Here, we're allowing God to build our life, and we're merely, I guess, spectators, in a sense, but we're allowing God to do his will in our lives. Every day is a day we must carry God's vision into all our activities. This is the way it is. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. Every day. And that's what they're talking about here. As your will, every day. Carry God's vision in your activities. God's will. This is the deep one. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. So it's giving us a condition to have God's will, to get rid of the bondage of self, freedom from the bondage of self. We know relief comes from a Latin word means to help, to ease something. An ice pack relieves pain. So bondage is a state of being a slave, perhaps a slave to instincts like pride, being bound to external control. And self is, for my interpretation, is one's essential drives for survival, the instincts. Relieve me in the bondage of high self-esteem, relieve the bondage of pride, relieve the bondage of emotional security. Instead of praying for stuff that makes me happy, I'm trying to pray to be relieved from the bondage of self to better do as well. I'm the prisoner of my own self. So we're beginning to transform from our will to God's will. It's interesting because the last 2 pages have been telling us that the real problem is relying on guidance of self and, instincts or whatever you want to, for our own direction in life. Look at all the pain that causes relying on self. Just think about it for a second. We forget that. I mean, someone might be sitting here saying, oh, this guy Steve's full of crap. Well, again, I used to do that, and I realized I was still in the bondage of self. Now you're asking yourself to relieve from the bondage of self. There's nothing more profound, than seeing a person lost in the bondage of self who is totally miserable for years, watching them dying in the pain and frustration, despair, and then suddenly raised from the dead. And you see that profound change. It's like magic. It's just so beautiful to see. I mean, talking about this makes my hair stand up my arms every time, because I've witnessed it. There's nothing like hearing a fist and watching someone change right in front of you. Nothing. Take away my difficulties, remove my difficulties, take them away. Again, the removal aspect. Difficulties is a condition of being troubled or challenged, right? I mean, any difficulty we go through and overcome is one more way that we can help others. Anytime we overcome something, it's another way we can help others. That's the beautiful thing in this program. Our difficulties is our defects of character to stand in the way of me being maximum service to God and people about us. That victory over those difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness. So victory, we know what that is. We talk about what success was a minute ago. It's achieve success in a struggle against great difficulties. Bear witness to see evidence and proof of something, to see it. To those I would help with thy power. Thy, singular pronoun meaning you. We know what help is. I mean, to offer service. We mentioned that. Maximum service. Power. Think about the ability to direct the course of events. I like to say to make something happen, to possess control, to have control. Internal strength brought on by this, whatever you want to call it, spirit within. Thy love. Unconditional love. God's love without conditions or limitations or judgment. Is that possible? I could say from my personal experience, it is. Is it something that stays on all the time? No, but the fact I'm aware of when it's not on, I can go back and recreate all this again. And thy way of life. Here we vow to help others reach this way of life. Way of life is the manner we live. And there's a difference between my life and my living. My living is what I do outside myself. My life is what I do inside. I always thought if I get my living in order, if everything out here is perfect, everything will go away. I thought if everything out here is good, everything in here inside would be good as well. The truth is, when I got my life in order, my living got better. My living got better. And look at the final line of the prayer. Most important, may I do thy will always. Always. At all times, forever. It's not easy. It's not easy. Eternity. Keep on going. Think of the triangle and the circle and the triangle. It's always going. It never ends. It keeps going. A circle. Infinity. May I do that well always. Infinity. So 2 parts to this prayer. The first is a petition, and the second part is an action. Is the action. So petition is a request for authority. When you seek the action of 4 through 9, after step 3, you will discover that your will in life is God's will in God's life. And every time I've done a genuine 3rd step prayer and followed with inventory, I must let him. That's the way it goes. And once you take that action, you begin to open the door for 6 and 7. I had strong mixed feelings when I did this prayer, like I said before, this prayer is my oath. It's my commitment to this. I'm going to turn this off real quick and we'll come back to it. And, so that prayer, I mean, it's my oath. And then the oath is all about commitment. And commitment is a promise to comply, to completely dedicate yourself to something. So in committing your life and will over the care of God, in steps 4 through 9, completely giving yourself to this program, and all rounds about helping others, being maximum service to God. And commitment is way more than words. It's not trying something and abandoning it. It's about a complete abandon and obligation. It's so our actions can speak louder than words, and our willingness to work the rest of our lives around it. To be selfless and making selfless sacrifices. It's sticking to something even when times are tough. Making time when there is none. Giving full attention and energy and effort to this. Putting your heart and mind and soul into it. Thank God for these steps. And we invest ourselves physically, mentally, and emotionally. Putting our time and energy into it day after day, year after year, month after month, second after second. This is making it our life, and this is the beginning of that. So commitment is daily triumph. And I like to say that the stuff character is made of. I was never good at commitment, and I never forget one time one thing I learned about commitment, there's no days off. Guy at a sponsee one time asked me, "When's your days off and doing this inventory stuff or steps?" I said, "There is no days off. Sorry." It may be easy, but all we have is our word. The most important thing we have is our word, right? I never forget, I was in a detox meeting with about 2 years of sobriety, and I drove by the place thinking, "Oh, my friend Frankie's got it down. He's better than I am at this. He could handle it blindfolded." But I get home and he walks in the door. He's my roommate at the time. He goes, "Where were you, dude?" And I go, "Oh man, you got it, dude. I was tired." And he goes, "Dude, what about your word? Where's your spirituality?" And because where's your spirituality if your word's no good? And it just stuck in my head. And then I realized, completely giving yourself to this program is about your word, your commitment. So this brings me, I love this. I'm going to tell this 3rd step parable. Some of you may have heard this before. There's different versions of it, but there's this old drunk walking on the street, and he's just frustrated. He knows what the program is in AA. He's been there before, but he just can't get past this obsession. And he calls it to God. "I can't do this anymore." God appears. He says, "God, please give me long-term sobriety. Give me your will. Take away this obsession." And God says, "Well, sobriety isn't free. How much money you got?" He says, "I got $80. God says, "I'll take that." And God puts his hand on his head and says, "You're free." All of a sudden, the man's body stands up. His face gets a little weight in his face. He's looking in the glass window of the store, and he's like, "Oh my God, I'm not a drunk anymore. The obsession's gone." And right, he turns to God and says, "Oh, I gave you my last $80, God. I need for the gas in my car." That's a lot more now, but the gas in my car, you know, and he goes, "Oh, I'll take that too." He goes, "Without a car, how can I get to work? If you have a job, I'll take that too. But God, how do I pay for my mortgage? You have a house, I'll take that too. But God, where are my kids going to sleep? Oh, you have kids? I'll take them too." And then he's, but God, and God just puts his hand gently on his shoulder and says, "Son, you can drive my car. As for your job, you're now working for me. As for your house, as for my house, you can lay in it. As for my children, I know you will take the best care of them ever if you stay on this path." And that's the third step parable. Bottom of page 63. I always say that parable because my grand sponsor used to do it. It's a kind of a tribute to him. He passed away a couple of years ago. We found it very desirable to take this spiritual step with an understanding person, such as our wife, best friend, or spiritual advisor. But it's better to meet God alone than with one whom I misunderstand. Very true. The wording was, of course, quite optional. So long as we express the idea without reservation, this was only a beginning. Though if humbly and honestly made, that's a condition, an effect. Sometimes a great one's filled at once. And that, I had a small effect. Some people have a big effect, and that can be a double-edged sword. Some people think that's all they need. And I have witnessed people in AA doing the third step, and they have this effect, meaning they don't take action. They just feel good about it, or they, and what I call people like that is low fruit pickers. And the reason I say that is, so out here where I live in a place that is huge in California for people coming from miles and miles around to go pick cherries. And we went out the other day to pick cherries, and we couldn't find a place to park. And when I go through there, I went there with my friend one day, and he didn't want to grab a ladder. He just wanted to get the cherries off the bottom. And he did. And I climbed the ladder and took my time and got to the top. And when we compared our cherries, his were rotted out and kind of weird looking, and mine were cherries. They were perfect. And so many turn their world lives over the care of God, but so many turn their world lives over the care of the meetings. Yeah, sure, they do annual house cleaning and somehow, that's every 6 months or once a year. They don't do step 10 daily. They rarely sponsor. They might pray and meditate not every day. They don't go out of their way to do service for others. And there's always an issue with drama going on. So the way I look at it is, you can be a low fruit picker and grab, the fruit that's easiest to grab, or you can, climb the ladder and work hard and get the best fruit there is possible for the long-term effect. So before I do the third step prayer with the sponsee is, I usually ask them questions such as this, are you convinced you're alcoholic? I want to know that again. Are you convinced you cannot manage your life? It's kind of like the ABCs again. Are you convinced that no human power can leave your alcohol? Are you convinced that God couldn't would if you were sought? Are you convinced that any life run itself will going to be a success? Are you convinced you need to quit playing God? And I ask them a question that's not really in the book necessarily, but are you ready to give up control? And I say, are you convinced you cannot get rid of self-will without his aid? And I ask them, I say, are you ready to take necessary action to turn your life to the care of God? But I ask them that after we do the third step. So we will do the third step as a group, one at a time. So I'm going to turn the recording off right now because we're not going to record this.